Welcome, everyone, to the Barbell Logic Nutrition Series. I'm your host, Niki Sims, and we are joined by guest host, Gillian Ward. All right, everybody, welcome back to Barbell Logic. I'm Niki Sims here with Gillian again. And today we have a pretty practical episode because what I really want to figure out from Gillian is like kind of how she lives her life in practice. Like we talk about all these things and about habits and concepts, but she actually really lives it out. Like you're so good about meal planning. You prepare for weeks in advance. You like sketch out what you're going to do when you go to the grocery store. But another important level of this is that you live with someone who you also cook for, but you guys aren't always on the same plan, eating wise.
Correct.
So that's really interesting. So what I want to do today is learn more about like what meal planning looks like for you and some tips that you use for people. And that's what I want to get into. So funny story that Gillian has is when you first moved to Vermont, which was earlier this year.
Yes, beginning of June.
You and your husband, you were eating like the same things, right? Ish.
Yes.
And how did that go?
So prior to that, I used to do all of his food prep and all of my food prep, and they were not always the same things. And I had a system and an order, but we moved to Vermont and we spent the first month here at an Airbnb.
Oh my gosh.
And we did not have... That's a whole other story. But we moved during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
We did not have really full kitchen access, or not everything in the kitchen worked.
Yeah.
It was a whole new, when you go into a new environment, even having different grocery stores kind of throws you off.
Big time.
And there were some challenges with just relearning. You don't realize, like, you take it for granted that you know what's on every aisle.
Yeah.
So we moved to Vermont. So many different things going on at once. And what we ended up doing was we would just eat the same things.
Okay.
So breakfast, lunch, and dinner together. And before that, I used to prep for him roughly 5 meals a day.
And what's like his build like?
His build, he is 6'2", about 215. There's been times that he's been a little bit heavier than that, around 225, but fit and muscular. Good metabolism.
You are not 6'2" and 215.
I am not. I am 5'4", about 150 pounds.
Yeah. Okay. So you guys are different.
Yes. And we were eating every meal together.
Okay.
It was easier that way. We were scrounging, we're eating every meal together. And what happened was his extra meals fell out. So like his snack meals fell out, the glass of milk that would be with his breakfast that I would give him, like, would be neglected, or we wouldn't be able to do it. And we were eating easy things.
Okay.
Chips and sandwiches, burgers at night for dinner, ordering pizza, which is not what I'm used to at all. So long story short, at the end of 30 days, when we got into our house, he had lost 8 pounds and I had gained 8 pounds.
That's not cool.
No. And it was just, like I said, we were eating the same thing. Like whatever I put on his plate was what I had put on my plate. And that
is so interesting. It's like a control experiment.
Absolutely. And when I've ordered, like if he had 1.5 donuts, I had 1.5 donuts. It was a little bit, I want to say, of a dark time. We did not have any entertainment in the evening. So we had no internet. We had no television. We didn't have a whole lot going on. We didn't know anybody here. And we would eat donuts at night.
And like count the mice in your Airbnb.
Yes. So
were any mice eaten during this 30 days?
There were no mice eaten, but just in all fairness, the reason why I wasn't using a kitchen to let some people in on this, we did have a period of 3 days where we caught 14 mice.
Oh my God, that's just not right.
Didn't have any other options at the time. Again, during COVID, if you were a non-resident, you could not get an Airbnb in the state. So we were very, very limited in what we were able to do.
Wow.
We paid cash ahead of time and we were locked into it. So some of the cooking scenario, it's not like me to eat out several nights a week. But like I said, we had a kitchen, we had a mouse infestation.
Oh, so bad.
And we're getting ready to talk about food.
So now that everybody's appetite is present. So now that you have a kitchen, you're in this beautiful home now, like have your goals for both of you stayed the same for training? And how has that impacted how you both eat?
So what's interesting is we train together and we eat together, but our
Mm-hmm.
goals right now are slightly divergent.
Mm,
I'd probably like to get a little bit leaner. I'm happy with where my strength is at. I've worked in a bunch of other like gymnastics elements and
yeah.
some yoga stuff. And he is looking to put on muscle and to get stronger.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's definitely different.
Yet we manage to train together and eat together.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is, I mean, the foods are the same. The healthy foods that I want to eat to accomplish my goals are the same foods that he's eating.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he gets a little bit of extra stuff. Maybe there's some butter on his vegetables, which might not be on mine. But a lot of the portions are different. And for us, sometimes the number of meals are different, kind of little add-ons. But
Okay. Yeah.
and I'm feeding somebody again that wants to grow at the same time that for me, I'm looking kind of to cut a little bit.
Do you ever get jealous of his meals? Like plate envy?
I think with portions sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
I think the understanding, like again, of what happened this summer when we had gotten a little bit loose with it, it was so fascinating
Yeah.
to just look at two different people that ate the exact same thing
That really is interesting.
and what happened.
Yeah. Man.
It's not like I was sneaking other things during the day.
Yeah.
Like we ate the exact same thing.
So you like to prepare a lot of meals in advance, right?
I do.
Do you do that like on a certain day of the week or a couple of days of the week?
So it depends. That's shifted a little bit.
Mhm.
So many of us are at home now.
Yeah.
When they know we weren't before. Ideally, I like to cook and eat fresh meals, but some of the preparing meals in advance, even if I don't eat them at that time, is insurance that I have something.
Mm-hmm.
So even if that meal is prepared the way somebody would use like a meal delivery service, like I may prepare like a week's worth of lunches and just store them. So one of the things that I find that I think of all of the things that made the move and things that were the most important, like for us in terms of space, like having a secondary refrigerator and deep freezer
Ooh, yeah.
were super, super important.
Yeah.
So that's right up there, like with a squat rack.
Yeah, that's an important tool because especially if you have two people eating a lot of fresh food, like your refrigerator is going to be full.
Yep.
And your freezer for all that backup stuff. And that's kind of probably a real limitation for like families if they are just like, they're actually constricted by their refrigerator space. That's interesting.
So about the question about preparing in advance, I prepare in advance for meals that I'm going to take on the go.
Okay.
So if there's going to be a meal that either I'm going to send my husband with to lunch or I'm going to go somewhere with it, I will prepare that meal in advance. And normally I'll split up meal prep to a couple of times during the week.
Okay.
So I may have, a 90-minute block on Tuesday mornings that is, say, preparing lunches, and a 90-minute block on Thursday mornings that's preparing, something else. But this doesn't have to take that much time and it doesn't have to be that complicated. Like this is something that I've been doing for years and years. And being a competitive bodybuilder, I wouldn't need anything that I didn't prepare myself. So like I would say if you're going to start with preparing anything in advance, it's going to be the meal that you are most likely to either not get in, to mess up, to be completely confused when that meal time comes. And it's different for everybody.
Oh, okay. So you kind of diagnose like the meal that they might need the most help with and then start to make it a constant in terms of they're always going to be prepared.
Yes.
That's cool.
We'll start with one meal, whether that meal, again, is breakfast ahead of time, or like for me personally, I'll sometimes have breakfast prepared ahead of time, or at least thought out what that's going to be and lunches. And I know in the evening that I have time to make a fresh dinner.
Yeah. I really like that concept.
And I have my snack ideas pre-planned.
Ooh.
So some of that is just thinking ahead of time. And again, what we talked about last time is prioritizing it. So
Yeah.
I start with keeping staples in the house. So let's say I don't have one of these meals. They're going to be go-to staples that I always have in the house.
What's an example of one?
So I'll put them with what we'll call perishable and non-perishable.
Oh, okay.
So staples in the house for me are going to be, in terms of proteins, I'm always going to have some kind of eggs in the house.
Oh, yeah.
So eggs, liquid egg whites usually, which you could freeze liquid egg whites.
Yeah, that's really cool. I learned that from you earlier this year.
Yep.
That's good to know.
So I'll have that in terms of proteins. I buy my meat based on what I see in the store. At times meat's very expensive here. Sometimes it's what's on sale.
Okay.
Sometimes if I could get a better cut of stuff. So my meat rotates,
Okay.
but I will generally, when I get good meat or whatever, I'll buy it and I'll stock meat.
Yeah.
But there's a couple things that they're not the best versions of stuff. Other proteins, I may keep canned tuna in the house, or canned chicken. And I would also probably keep possibly deli meat that has a good date, like, a low sodium turkey that has a good date. So those things are not necessarily what I'm eating, but they're going to be kind of emergency foods.
Okay. So even with as much planning as you do, you still have to have emergency foods.
Still have to have emergency foods.
Yeah.
Yes. But something like even having eggs at the end of the day, you have a crazy busy day, you could have breakfast for dinner.
Yeah. It takes like 10 minutes. It's the best.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like something like for me, like eggs, usually, low fat dairy, or something like, a really high protein Greek yogurt is something that I will always have in the house in terms of perishable food.
Yeah.
Whether I'm using that to make a dressing, a tzatziki sauce, whether I'm eating that for breakfast in the morning. So that would be on the list of my necessities.
I like that.
And then in terms of carbohydrate foods, I'll always have some kind of rice because, again, that's not going to spoil.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I'm looking for a carb. I'm going to have some kind of rice. Normally, I will freeze like a decent bread and have that in the freezer, even if I don't have it fresh.
Okay.
Let me think of other carbs. So usually fairly decent cereal of choice, like a cold cereal of choice. And
potatoes?
So potatoes I will buy, but in terms of a staple of always having, if I know I'm going to cook them for the week, I'll buy them. But in terms of like a go-to, like, I'm stuck here, I know that I have this in the house, and then I will always replace it when it runs out.
Ooh, I like that. It's like a savings account.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and again, there's no food. A lot of it is portion size. There's no food that's off limits. Like I may have, a box of jasmine rice, a box of brown rice, a box of pasta, and they're just, if they're gone, I replace them.
Okay.
So that, again, if I get to a point where I have options, so they're foods that no matter what I have. And then frozen vegetables. So I buy tons of fresh vegetables every week, but I don't want to be in a position that I have no veggies to add to a meal.
That'd just be the worst.
So, yep. So frozen veggies are also going to be a staple.
So what other staples do you have in your house at all times that you like to make sure get replaced?
So there's always going to be coffee.
Of course. Yes.
Of course, coffee. There's always going to be oatmeal.
That's one of my staples too.
I'm always going to have a very, very wide array of spices and condiments.
What about like stuff that you use to cook things like broths?
I'm going to have broths. I'm usually going to have a beef broth and a chicken broth, whether I made it myself or not.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to have nuts.
Yep.
I usually have some types of cheese because there's generally a good shelf life on the cheese, and cooking fats.
Oh, okay.
So various depending on temperature. So I usually in the house will have coconut oil, olive oil, butter, and then possibly some specialty oils.
Yeah.
Vinegar all the time.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I remember using a lot of apple cider vinegar for cooking things. That's always good to have. Yeah. And then you can make your own dressings with anything. Yeah. Okay.
And those are the things that I keep. And if I run out of, I keep an inventory on. So I don't ever want to get to a point that I can't make a recipe because I'm like, I'm missing this ingredient or that ingredient. It could be something like soy sauce.
Yeah.
So, really just making a list of the things that you like, that you use frequently. And I have that in the house at all times.
I like that.
So when I go to the store for the week, making a recipe, I don't need to get 20 ingredients. I need to get like the 5 fresh ingredients.
So you probably do like a kitchen scan before you go to the grocery store, right?
I do. My refrigerator gets emptied frequently. I try not to let anything spoil. I try not to throw out any food. And I've started to make a little bit of a game with it. It's like, what kind of budget? Like, how could I eat really, really well? And what does it cost me for the week? And then try to beat it the next week.
Wow.
Yep. So like I said, I've been doing this a while. And some of it also came from the difference in food price moving from North Carolina to Vermont.
Yeah, I had no idea that food prices were much higher in Vermont.
So food is much more expensive here.
Wow.
In North Carolina, we were also near the commissary where prices are amazing.
Oh, right.
And in Vermont, I mean, even during COVID in general, meat prices were very high, but there have been times that I've paid, almost $13 a pound for chicken breast here, not even organic.
Good gracious.
Yep.
That's nuts. And that seems like it would be like one of the cheap staples that people could be like, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to eat like the cheap lean diet and just get a bunch of chicken breasts. But yeah, that's interesting.
And chicken is so amazingly versatile and people get sick of it. And that's why today I want to talk about some recipes for chicken, because we know that in terms of picking lean protein sources, chicken is like a great one.
Totally.
But it's something that people get so sick of and people develop like an aversion to it. They're like, I can't eat any more chicken.
It's funny you say that because I only recently, I think after 2 months, started to buy chicken again because I got myself so sick of it. I was like, I can't even think about making another shredded chicken meal. Like, I don't want anything to do with it. But we're back on good terms now. Did you want to talk about recipes next, or?
So I think possibly go into just the way I approach a week.
Ooh, yes. Okay.
So the very first thing I do is I look at the number of meals that I know are going to be out of the house.
Okay.
Is it a social meal?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a restaurant one night? So number the meals that I'm either going to feed additional people or are going to be out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, I try to limit that to one. Occasionally, there's 2 meals, and I want to plan around it. So a lot of people could go out and make amazing choices.
Mm-hmm.
When I go for the experience of a restaurant, like I don't need to overeat,
Yeah.
but I would like to go there and not order a grilled chicken salad.
Right.
Because I don't have to, because 95% of the meals I eat are coming from the home.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So I'm really budgeting. If there's a special occasion or something else, I'm budgeting my week based on that. So the first thing I'll do is I'll look at that on the calendar, what meals are out. Okay, I don't need a plan for that.
Okay.
And have really good awareness of what my schedule is going to be like. And then from there, generally, I will pick 2 or 3 dinner recipes for the week that I want to make and to have leftovers. I mean, I don't have to cook every single night. Occasionally, I will cook something, but usually I'll cook 2 or 3 nights a week.
Okay.
And then the other nights are either something simple, possibly a homemade pizza, or leftovers of some sort. So, and then we'll talk about the same food that you could do like 3 or 4 different ways for meals.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the staples, one night may be like a taco chicken salad, and another night it's over rice, and another night it's in tortillas.
Ooh, perfect.
So the same foods we'll use differently.
Yeah.
So generally I'll pick 2 or 3 dinners that I want. Often I will find a really like complex recipe in like some like fine food that's done,
Bon appetit kind of.
Yes. And then I'll work to make my healthy spin on it.
Oh, that's neat.
So, where can I cut some fat from it? Where can I cut, sugars out of it?
Yeah.
And figure out, and I've learned some of this with time and stuff, is how could I make it my way? So I'll pick those 2 recipes or 3 recipes and making sure all those dinners have like lots of veggies in them.
Do you ever, like some people will make dinners for the sole purpose of having leftovers to eat for lunch? Do you do that also, or do you approach that differently?
So sometimes when I am not spending as much time on food prep, I will make dinners and have leftovers for lunch, or I'll do a separate lunch prep. So we'll talk about both of those scenarios.
Okay.
So in terms of dinner, I pick 2 or 3 meals for the week. And I'm going to buy whatever I need to make those meals, but I'm feeding 2, but I'm thinking in terms of making 4 meals. So I'm thinking about feeding 2 for 2 days.
Got it.
When I make the dinners.
I like that.
If I'm on top of things in terms of lunches, what I do is I pick 1 lunch for the week. I'm going to make 1 type of thing. And maybe that's something easy. Maybe that's, seasoned ground beef plus sweet potato plus green beans. And that's just what lunch is. And I make a large batch of that for the week.
Yeah.
But let's say I'm sick of that and that's not what I want to eat all week. What I always have is a very simple lunch creation in the house. So right now I have 2 simple lunch creations. So there's like a nice home-baked bread. So I could do a turkey sandwich.
Ooh.
And, I load it up with veggies, could put hummus on it. This time of year, sometimes I'll even put a little bit of cranberry sauce on it.
Ooh, yeah.
I know there's some sugar in that, but I've got an option. And then have my veggies with it for lunch.
Okay.
Or I'll use some of my pre-cooked chicken that I make and add it this time of year. I love to have soup. So whether I made a vegetable soup, whether you buy a vegetable soup, or like you could find all of these lighter soups, and you could just add your chicken to that.
Oh, I love that.
So I've got a couple different options if I choose not to have my hot meal.
Okay.
But what I do, we talked about the meal. Let's say I made the ground beef and sweet potato and green beans. What I'll do with those meals, rather than let them go bad, is once I portion them and cook them, I will freeze them.
Yeah.
So like today, I have an option. Do I want to pull one of those meals out? Or maybe I decided that this morning. Or do I want to have my turkey sandwich? Or do I want to have my chicken soup?
And you have 3 good ideas, 3 good choices.
Yep.
So instead of like being there hungry and not knowing what to be like, well, I have cheese and I have oatmeal. You can actually eat a meal.
Having lean proteins in the house and vegetables, and then you work around it kind of with other stuff. So that'll be the first thought I have for lunch. I'm like, want my lean protein. I want my vegetable. And what else am I going to add to it? And then I love even raw cut veggies, like something like celery could be a vehicle, for soft cheese. It could be a vehicle for peanut butter, for cottage cheese, for hummus. So you could go all different ways with that.
I like that you called it a vehicle.
A vehicle. So, I mean, you can make a kid-friendly celery stalk and fill it with peanut butter and raisins and stuff.
What's that called? Like ants on a log? I think that's called
ants on a log. And it should be fun. Like, I really try to make my food fun to eat. I went through many years of just eating ingredients for bodybuilding where I literally would have, 4 to 6 ounces of plain fish and a steamed vegetable. And I want to look down at the plate and have the colors pop and want to eat that every single time I eat.
Yeah.
And there are going to be people that disagree with me and say food is fuel, but it's more than that to me.
Well, it seems like by doing that, you keep eating an enjoyable experience. Even when it is just fuel, you still keep yourself excited about meal prep. It's like a creative outlet. Like you're setting yourself to not get burnt out by making the same food is fuel decisions over and over.
And then also to focus on eating. So I don't eat in front of the computer. I don't eat in front of the television. I don't scroll through Instagram when I'm eating.
Yeah.
Scott and I will sit down and have a conversation, and we are sitting, looking out at the mountains and enjoying our meal. So
I like that.
Eating time is all that we're doing.
Did you guys do that when you first started eating together, or is that like a Gillian rule?
No, we both had similar, had thoughts about that. And I think I imposed a lot of my beliefs about stuff. But when you don't get a lot of food and you don't get to eat, when you're eating and doing other stuff, you could often eat mindlessly.
Totally.
And I always want to eat mindfully.
Yeah, I like that.
Because, if you just eat a bag of chips or whatever it is you're eating and you're sitting in front of the computer and you're working, you're not processing what you're eating.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, there are no more chips left. And I'm the only person in this room. What happened? That's cool.
So that's lunch and dinner. And then we'll talk about what those dinners, staples of that. And then for breakfast, I do have the ability to prep. Usually I'll tell somebody to pick 2 different breakfast options for the week and have both in the house. I could eat the same thing every day. I do a 1-bowl breakfast that I think I once wrote a recipe for.
Oh, yeah.
So I do basically half a cup of oatmeal, cup of egg whites. You could add a whole egg if you want. This time of year, I do half a cup of pumpkin and 2 tablespoons of some kind of chopped nuts and mix that all together, and it becomes like a breakfast souffle.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so good.
So it's not sweet because pumpkin is not sweet, and you could top it. So Scott's is more calorie dense than mine. So he tops his with a bunch of nut butter and a bunch of honey. There are certain things that I believe it's a personal choice. Like if you wanted to use artificial sweetener on it, like a packet of stevia, that'll help. You don't need to put nut butter on it, but basically we have tons of fiber, slow burning carbs in the oats. We have tons of protein in there, and it really lasts. So we do this 1-bowl meal. It could be cooked for 2 to 3 minutes in the microwave, and you're good to go.
I love that. That's cool.
And then if you don't want to do that, even a yogurt parfait for breakfast, I like the idea of not having a bunch of waste to clean up. If I have time in the morning, I'm making a big giant veggie omelet and something to go with it. But if not, I like to have everything in 1 bowl. Clean up's easy and done.
Same. I'll do frozen cherries. I love frozen cherries. And I'll heat those up so they're not frozen anymore.
Ooh.
Yogurt, almond slivers, cinnamon, boom, good to go.
Ooh, that's perfect.
That's really good. It's a little bit like I'm eating ice cream for breakfast.
You just hit what would have been my other 1-bowl recommendation.
Yeah, the yogurt thing, huh?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good staple. Yeah, so breakfast seems pretty fluid. Do you eat the same things on the weekends as you do during the week?
Generally, so breakfast is usually what's different because there's more time and it's not as early in the morning.
Yeah.
So breakfast on the weekend will be a little bit bigger. Sometimes, it'll be a big giant omelet that maybe meats that were cooked earlier in the week for dinner may even find their way into there.
Yeah.
So when I think about my breakfast, I'm thinking about weekday, kind of in a rush, easy cleanup.
Yeah. I like that. It seems where maybe some people will really kind of go off the rails a little bit is over the weekends.
Absolutely. Not just meals. So the other thing to think about when planning ahead is picking your snacks.
Yeah. Okay.
So what happens is when people shop hungry, they buy everything in the store.
Absolutely.
What I like to do is pick my snacks for the week. When I go to the store, this is your snack for the week. You don't get to come back and get other stuff.
Mhm.
Budget whatever those snacks are. And I believe like in, the correct quantities, you could really choose anything that you want. But I have my couple of snack items, and that's what I get for the week.
Like, what are some examples of your snacks?
So for me, I'll mostly do fruit and nuts as a snack. It'll be an apple and almonds. I like to combine a couple of textures.
Ooh, that's smart.
So like if I'm going to do yogurt, I may do some kind of, either I'll make my own granola or something crunchy over the yogurt.
Yeah.
So I generally like a snack to be more than one food.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like when you have a snack that's only one food, you end up wanting to eat more anyway.
Yes.
You need some diversity. Yeah. I dig that. I think the crunch factor is important for snacks.
Yes, totally agree.
Something about that is very gratifying.
And I'll even combine like a sweet and a salty. I mean, it could be something like an ounce of cheese and like a clementine, but something where there's more than one texture, there's more than one flavor, and it's really just going to be a mini meal.
Do you find that having just the one snack for the week is really helpful for people who maybe over snack?
I think it's helpful. I think we have so many choices that it makes it impossible. I think it's such a daunting task to go grocery shopping, to pick out what you're going to have for the week. And I think it helps just to simplify it.
Yeah.
So there's something that I heard that's actually somebody that, this woman, Lauren Valentino, that used to be my diet prep coach for bodybuilding competition. And she does a blog and she talked about, go shopping. And she talked about a list of 5.
Ooh.
So when she goes to the store, each week, just in terms of simplifying it, she goes and she buys 5 vegetables. You're getting 5 vegetables for the week, 4 protein sources, 3 different carbohydrates,
okay,
2 fat sources, and 1 fruit. So say that's an apple for every day. So I think we go and we have so many choices.
Yeah.
And really what I want to do is set the limits. Like I don't want to impulse buy at the store.
Yeah.
And I've done that. I did that a couple of weeks ago. I bought every pumpkin spice product there was. I was like, I want pumpkin Pop-Tarts and pumpkin cereal and pumpkin this. And I got home and I had pumpkin Pop-Tarts that night before bed. And I was like, this isn't really all that good. But it was one of those moments. So you know what happened? I went to the store. It was a weekend and I did not eat breakfast first. I waited and I was up for hours. I was probably up for 4 or 5 hours and I shopped hungry and I got distracted by all the pretty things on the end caps. And I'm like, I need to have pumpkin Pop-Tarts. So even I fall into these traps.
It's the season. I recently got the pumpkin Milano cookies. And
How are they?
They're pretty good, but honestly, not as good as the regular Milanos. So I'm in no danger of eating the whole thing, which is kind of nice. So there you go, folks. Do you do your grocery shopping on the same day every week?
I still haven't really figured out my way here yet. And I still don't even know the stores that well. But typically I'll do one major trip and then I'll do one minor trip for like little stuff that I missed during the week.
Yeah.
So it's typically on 2 days.
Yeah, that's nice. You said something earlier about like understanding the layout of a grocery store and like when you move to some like a new area, you don't realize it, but that's like a stressful thing where you like don't know if you can get everything and where everything is. Like it turns grocery shopping into what might usually be just like, oh, let me just run in there and grab everything that I need, into like this kind of big stressful ordeal. And I imagine that is like a limiting factor for some people.
It's such a stressful experience.
Yeah.
I think even what's going on now with the pandemic and the rules and up and down the aisles a certain way, and how difficult it is to open a plastic bag without being able to lick your fingers for produce. Like these are real things. Like I've stood there near ready to burst into tears because I couldn't bag something because my hands were dry. Then you go touch everything that's wet and like manhandle the produce.
Like this was worth it. That's hilarious. Yeah, Vermont seems really strict. Wow. California's not like that.
But I think having a plan when you go into the store is definitely going to be key.
And then maybe just making sure you go to the same grocery store every time.
Yes.
Yeah, I know I end up doing that. It's just so much easier. And there's a Ralph's right by me, and then there's another Ralph's like 3 blocks away, but they're laid out so differently that I really hate going to the faraway Ralph's because it's stressful. I don't know where everything is. It's in different orders. I don't know why they do that. And it's like okay to just kind of create that source of consistency, I think.
That's something we take for granted.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I compared the time it took me to shop here when I first got here versus a store that I was familiar with, and it was almost twice the amount of time.
Wow, that's significant.
Not knowing where things is, missing something in the store.
Yeah.
So no, we definitely become attached to where we shop.
So when you start working with someone, what kind of conversations do you have around grocery shopping?
The idea of this, like where I've gotten to it, is so far beyond somebody just starting out.
Mm-hmm.
And really what I want to know is, what do they like and not like to do about it? What are their fears? Is it a time thing? Is it that, they don't, when someone tells me they don't like to cook, I want to dig deeper into what they mean by that.
Yeah.
Is it a time thing? Are they afraid that the people in their house don't like their food or won't eat their food?
They just not want to do dishes. Like,
right.
What's stopping them? Yeah.
And I'll usually start with something simple like preparing one meal because it's empowering. So somebody that doesn't prepare anything, just taking control of it is going to be empowering for them. So I won't start somebody with food prepping 3 meals per day.
Yeah.
I'm going to start them with 1. And the other thing is you get people that are trying to be healthier and make better choices that are used to really cooking. And where do you go with those people?
Oh, right. When they're using all the butters, all the creams.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that is interesting because now you're kind of pulling a lot back and pulling a lot of flavor away too.
So some of that maybe to throw the challenge to them, like what I do when I read a recipe is how could you make this meal, the same meal that you make, whatever, and make maybe a lighter option of it.
That's fun. Yeah, I like that mindset shift of, because sometimes when you're trying to eat a certain way, you feel restricted. But now it's just like, no. How can you make that yours? And what exactly isn't working? And how can you change that to make it work for you? That seems important.
And I think one of the things people run into when they start using food trackers, like MyFitnessPal and other things, is we get into, and especially people that track macros, start eating ingredients and stop eating meals.
Totally.
They start eating, here's a piece of chicken and a bunch of broccoli and a potato. But like maybe the pot pie or the stew they would have had before doesn't exist anymore.
Right. The same ingredients, but in like a wonderful, like you said, wonderful stew, but they won't eat it.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is too bad.
I think there's an evolution back to that when you teach people what's in their food. I think sometimes it comes down to getting down to the basics like ingredients. And then working on recipes to recombine those things. Yeah. And also not being fearful of them. So there's a couple of recipes that I like as go-to easy stuff for people that they can't mess up. And when I talked about the difference between my caloric needs and my husband's caloric needs and like how we would do something differently. So let's talk about this chicken that everybody gets kind of sick of. So all you need to do is have chicken of a poor consistency, whether it's undercooked, whether it's rubbery, and you're just going to be completely turned off about chicken.
Totally. Too dry chicken. That's my problem.
So exactly. So I like to do chicken in a crock pot.
Yeah.
And occasionally I'll do it extremely plain. And by extremely plain, it's just the chicken in there, depending on the quality of the chicken. Occasionally I'll add some chicken broth to it. That's not going to have any flavor really at all.
That's nothing. Yeah.
I may do that if I'm going to make a chicken salad or something after with that.
Yeah.
But some real simple recipes. Here's one that I use throughout the week in different ways. So something very easy, taco chicken. I'll put 3 or 4 pounds of chicken breast in there, trimmed, and one either homemade, but let's say we're not going homemade yet. 1 packet of taco seasoning.
Okay.
And 1 jar of salsa of choice.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And then after the chicken cooks, I would do low or high. You really can't mess this up. So you could do it on low for about 8 hours, or you could do it on high for about 5 to 6 hours. You incorporate everything together, shred it, and you have kind of like a salsa taco chicken.
Yum. That sounds delicious. And you can use that in so many different ways.
Right. So we'll make a batch of that. And during the week, like when I say I may eat something for 2 days or 3 days, that same chicken, that 4 pounds of chicken is going to get used in a variety of ways.
Yeah.
So, one night I may do that over like a small amount of rice and do, chopped lettuce, tomato, onion, fresh avocado.
Mm-hmm.
and make a big chicken salad.
There you
And
go.
then the next night, I'm going to put that, possibly in tortillas
Mm-hmm.
or, fold that up and roll it into an enchilada.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
And then I may do something, have that left over on the weekend and make a Mexican chicken pizza
Yeah.
and take that and put it on a thin crust. So some of those proteins I'll do with pork, like carnitas, I'll do with chicken.
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally I'll do with a cut of beef, make a large amount in a crock pot with a relatively neutral flavor.
Okay.
And then be able to go different ways by incorporating different vegetables and different complex carbs.
Mm-hmm.
So that one's kind of a Mexican variation, but let's say there's somebody that likes like kind of like junk food. So like loves like buffalo chicken.
Ooh, okay.
So a real easy way is about 3 to 5 pounds of chicken with a half a cup of your favorite hot sauce. Like I'll use Frank's hot sauce
Mm-hmm.
and 1 packet of ranch seasoning. So you basically get a buffalo ranch chicken.
Wow.
And doesn't have added fat. It has
Mm-hmm.
very few added calories. I'm not going to say the Hidden Valley Ranch packet of dressing is super healthy.
Yeah.
You have healthier options for ranch. You could use there's something called Flavor God. That's a type of seasoning that's not going to have all of the preservatives and other stuff in it. But this is something simple. Hot sauce, ranch, chicken, and now you have this buffalo ranch chicken. And again, you could throw that on top of a baked potato. You could do that over rice. And then the weekend comes and I want junk food, I am putting that on a pizza and putting cheese on top of that.
Mm-hmm. That sounds great.
So simple. Like I said, you can't really mess up the chicken.
Yeah.
There's going to be times that that's not the consistency that you want. The reason I recommend crock pot chicken is it keeps really well and it freezes well and it holds its texture.
Yeah.
So you could freeze it, you could reheat it. And if you do something that has some extra fluid in it, it's going to hold its texture. Something like grilled chicken does not always do well reheated.
I see. That's good to know.
So the big crock pot chicken, and then occasionally I'll have a large batch of it. And let's say, you're away for a weekend, you come home, there's no food in the house.
Yeah.
And now you have this very versatile protein that you could do anything with.
That's literally what I'm doing right now. I have a whole bunch of chicken in my slow cooker. I'm leaving town tomorrow for the weekend and I want to come back and not be tempted to like order out. I want to have my stuff ready for me. And I'm going to make some of it into a chicken salad that I can eat in the car with everybody tomorrow. But it's true. I love the versatility and how easy it is to do shredded chicken because I'm like one of those people who go through phases of like really wanting to spend a lot of time in the kitchen and have some fun in there. And then sometimes it's like, I don't really feel like being in there, but I still want to make sure that I'm eating what I should be. So shredded chicken is the bomb.
Shredded chicken is the best. Making some kind of soup base or broth base also is awesome.
Oh, yeah.
I think Monica makes broths, doesn't she?
I think so. That seems like something she would do. Yeah.
And I think even having that and then being able to add stuff to it. So that's another thing that I like. But the chicken, usually I'll have somebody start with chicken. And then depending if they like other cuts of meat, a lean pork is easy to do that way.
Mm-hmm.
I really like just sauteing any kind of ground meat, ground beef, or ground turkey in a pan. And I like a 1-pan meal where all of the veggies are in it with it.
That's so easy. Yeah.
So I do a ground turkey one where I call it my Southwestern deconstructed peppers.
Oh, yeah. I made this one. It's great.
And it's ground turkey, seasoned the way you like it. And I do tons and tons of different colorful peppers in there, onions if you like it. Sometimes I make it hot with jalapenos and poblanos and a whole variety of peppers.
Yeah.
Occasionally I'll add beans into it.
Oh, yeah.
And then, if you want to take a veggie, and I will wilt an entire bag of spinach over the top.
Yeah.
So I've got tons of color, the colors from the peppers, the colors from the spinach.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll put some crushed tomatoes in there or can of tomatoes.
Mm-hmm.
And you have this unbelievably colorful meal, which has all of your veggies in it. And the same thing with that, I'll serve it in tortillas. I'll serve it over rice.
So good.
And just about everything I can make into a pizza.
Yeah, you can put you can even put an egg on that and it'd be a tasty breakfast thing. And pizza, of course. I like that all of these are interchangeable with pizza. Pizza is basically a base, just like rice.
So I want to say that we do have that recipe up, right, on Barbell Logic.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I mean, you could do it with turkey, you could do it with beef, you could do it with ground chicken.
Yep.
Generally speaking, when we talk about food, the way you keep it in terms of storing it, so you do basically a ground meat it's generally going to freeze well and reheat fairly well. So like something like steak is often going to get tough.
Yeah, that won't work very well.
So when I'm food prepping and possibly prepping something I may not eat until 3 days later, a week later, maybe far out in advance, I will use a lot of ground meat because I'm then able to freeze it and reheat it and not really lose texture on it.
Yeah, I dig that.
The other thing, like sweet potatoes versus white, like a lot of white potatoes don't freeze well. Have you noticed that?
They get really weird. It's like not a pleasant texture. Yeah.
Yes.
Gross. But sweet potatoes, those are always good. And they still have color, which is always nice to look at when you've just unfrozen something.
Yes.
Have you frozen purple potatoes? Those seem to work.
They do.
Just as well. Yeah. They have a different texture than sweet potatoes, but it's still nice to have that color.
They do work well, but there's something about a white potato that it just doesn't work.
Yeah. Which is surprising. You'd think they would be the most hearty. Awesome. What do you do for desserts? Like, what's the end cap?
So I'm very structured throughout the day, and then I allot myself an amount of calories at night for dessert and booze. There's a fixed amount of calories, and if I have more booze, it's less dessert. If I have more dessert, it's less booze. And that's part of the day where Scott gets more calories than I do. So we pretty much, most mornings are that one bowl kind of oatmeal concoction. Lunch is either a hot lunch, which is one thing for the entire week, or it's one of the discussions of the turkey sandwich or chicken soup. Dinner is fresh most nights. He has a larger portion, and there may be things, how else that'll differ is Scott may have, some shredded cheese and a half of avocado on top of that, where I don't get those things.
Yeah.
So he may have a glass of milk in the morning where I don't have it.
I see.
Or a second snack that I don't have it. And then at night, to me, those are my, after I've consumed all of the nutrients for the day and hit all the wickets, I've got my fiber, I've got at least 5 veggies in there, I've got an adequate amount of protein. Once I've hit all of those wickets for the day.
What's a wicket?
Like, what does the word mean?
Yeah, I have no idea what a wicket is.
Could you Google it or no? No, we Google it right now. I think I'm using the right word. Like, I think
Can you Google it?
I don't have my phone in here. Let's Google wicket. I may be using just a word that doesn't make sense.
Okay, so far it's a Star Wars character. Is it from the game of cricket?
Is there not a wicket word?
It's a small door or gate, especially one beside or in a larger one. Or in the game of cricket, each of the sets of 3 stumps with 2 balls across the top at either end of the pitch, defended by a batsman. So that could be what it is.
Are those the only definitions?
One of them's about in the game of croquet. It's one of the wire hoops in croquet.
All right, I need to look this up.
That's WICKET. Would that be spelled any differently?
That's how I think I would spell it. Okay.
So Gillian was saying a word that doesn't make any sense.
Okay, so once I eat what I consider to be all of my nutritious foods for the day, so
which we are now going to be called wickets.
Yes. So the foods that fuel the body.
Yes.
In the evening, I give myself a fixed amount of calories to feed my soul, which will generally come from like wine and chocolate.
I love it. Do you intentionally keep that simple, like instead of doing like something that you baked like a cookie or a brownie or something, you go for like more of a single ingredient like dark chocolate, or is chocolate is your preference?
It could absolutely be something home baked, but just like with a snack, I pick one dessert for the week.
Oh, nice. Okay.
That's my weakness. So I love sweets, and I have a little rule for myself that like that stuff doesn't come out until after dark. So
that's a great idea.
And part of it is that I know, which now it gets dark at like 4:30.
True.
But I know if I ate it earlier during the day, it's going to cause cravings. I'm not going to I mean, you don't feel well when like you eat donuts.
Right. Like 3 hours later, you're just like, I don't like who I am.
You're either
right
ravenously hungry, your blood sugar crashes.
Does not feel good.
I'm not advocating eating a whole bunch of junk food and going to sleep with a full stomach, but I save a small treat for me and I have it at nighttime. That's the time of day that I want it.
That's cool. I like that.
And that's something that, so like right now where, I'm trying to lose a little bit, that's where I'm cutting back.
Cutting back from the fun time.
So cutting back may look like do that 2 nights a week instead of 7 nights a week.
Oh, I see. So you still have it. You still have it to look forward to. You still have it to enjoy.
Or I have less of it. So like, let's say my allotted calorie budget on any normal time is 500 free calories at night. That's a lot. I don't give any of my clients 500 free calories.
That sounds fun.
But I give it to myself.
Have fun with your 250.
Possibly get a lot of emails about that. So let's say it is 500, which goes very quickly if you're talking about wine and a dessert.
You have a glass of wine.
Yes.
Because a glass of wine is like 490 calories.
So like right now we have a fresh baked apple pie in the house.
Yum.
So if I had a glass of wine and like an adult sized slice of pie, I mean, you're going to hit that very easily.
Yeah.
So what I would do is, so chocolate, the reason I choose that most of the time, especially for me, if I'm trying to cut back, is that I could be satisfied with a small amount.
Yeah, it goes a long way.
I could have a square or two of chocolate. I don't want to have one bite out of the pie. So
yeah. Taste economy. I like that. That's smart. Yeah, dark chocolate can really, it's like when you eat it too, you can just like savor it for a little while versus like an apple pie. You're just like, I need to get to the crust, so let me get it sooner.
And not everybody has to eat junk food every day. Like,
right. I don't know who those people are, but I know they exist.
Again, I am somebody that loves junk food and I don't want the kind of relationship. Like if it's something that somebody really, really enjoys, what I don't want to do is build something where they avoid it completely.
Yeah.
And it's all they think about. And when they do eat it, they binge or develop. Like a lot of it is about having healthy relationships with your food.
Yeah. You don't want to demonize it. Yeah. Or let it make you feel a certain way that's negative.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think, but choosing the things that you have self-control with, like there are some dessert items that like I don't have self-control with. I know if I make brownies, and especially if I like made something home baked, I justify somehow that it's healthy because I made it myself. Even,
well, of course.
Right.
That's just science, Gillian. And like when you eat just the batter, there are no calories. Any batter consumed during the baking process doesn't count. Just kidding. I know that's not true. Sorry, we were talking about things that we could have self-control over. Batter is not one.
So I think to take that point, I will overall avoid foods that I lack control with.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that I'll never eat them. Like it doesn't mean that I'm never going to have seasoned curly fries or a plate of nachos, but I generally will not eat foods that I have a hard time controlling in quantity.
You're setting yourself up in ways to make the best decisions that you can. And by being around those foods all the time, you would not set yourself up to make good decisions.
I will go into something that was I may have mentioned this before, a very unhealthy habit. When I've gone through long periods of deprivation, like times I was competing in bodybuilding where I would go 16 or 20 weeks without eating any of those things, I would actually buy them. So I would go to the store. It made me happy. And I got scared do you remember when Twinkies like temporarily went out of business?
No.
So I want to say like maybe 10 years ago, like I think it was threatened and might have gone out of business, or there was talk that it was going to go out of business, whatever the company was.
I think that's made it into the history books though, I'm pretty sure.
So I could be making this up like I made up that word.
It's like your local store just ran out of them for a weekend.
So maybe I had this dream. Anyhow, I would have a fear like Girl Scout cookies. Like if I need to have them.
Oh, wow.
And while I was on like a prolonged diet, any food that I had that I wanted that was shelf stable, I would buy. And I would store it in a gun safe.
This is a healthy relationship.
And I wouldn't eat it. It made me happy to know that that it still existed. And I would tell myself like after the competition that I'd open it up and like eat all of those things.
Did you?
Is not healthy.
That's an example of a bad idea.
So, and I would eat like 5. And of course your stomach shrinks because you've hardly been eating for, 4 months or longer. And I would eat some of it and I would end up donating it. Or
Oh.
when guests would come, I would give him Girl Scout cookies that were 3 years old. I didn't just say that, did I?
It's like September. You're like, do you want some Girl Scout cookies? Oh, I love it. That's great. I'd love to leave a house with Girl Scout cookies. I don't care how old they are. Awesome. Oh, you know what? I have a question.
Sure.
What if you eat with someone who's a really picky eater? How do you if you're someone in a household where you're really trying to make these nutrition choices, and then you also have to cook with someone who's a really picky eater who does not want to eat how you eat? Like, just make separate meals and eat separately, or how do you recommend people go about that?
So that is super complicated, especially if you're the one going through the effort of food prepping.
Yeah.
That would make the case for making your ingredients somewhat plain and then assembling sauces, gravies, dressings, all that other stuff after.
Okay.
Which it is difficult. Like, for instance, my family is coming here for Thanksgiving weekend and they don't eat. We do a lot of very, very spicy stuff in the house, and use some ingredients that are not just your regular meat, potatoes, vegetables. There may be different kinds of vegetables. And then you prepare for somebody else. Its tastes are very, very different. So I would say if you have a picky eater, your staples are going to be your staples. Like if you're making things like rice, potatoes,
pizza,
basics and stuff. And then, just allow, I like the idea of a topping bar, prepare it as plain as possible. And then, make food fun. If you're eating with children and stuff, whether the toppings, everybody has the same basics, which is their, lean protein, vegetables, possibly complex carb on the plate. And then the little fixins that go on it, put out a topping bar.
That's a great idea. Yeah. Sweet. I'm good. I think I got all my questions answered.
I'm still processing the fact that I told everybody that I used to give people cookies that were 3 years old. They were still sealed, though. The boxes were not open.
Did a mouse get into this? Nope. No idea how that happened. That's awesome. Well, anything else?
So I think takeaways for people. So this is all very daunting and we don't want it to be overcomplicated.
Yeah.
Start first with an inventory of what's in your house right now, just to get an awareness of what's there. I think start establishing your staples in your home. The things that when you go to the grocery store and you're worried about having to get toilet paper and paper towels and disinfectant and all that other stuff, you don't need to buy 10 spices. Or something. So I think establishing what your staples are, your perishable and non-perishable staples that are always in the house, that you do an inventory and you replace them.
Yeah.
And then planning ahead, just envisioning the week ahead of you and starting with the meal that you're most likely to mess up. So anything helps. If it's one meal a day that you prepped, it's one more than you are not prepping.
True. And I find that I'll look for recipes from paleo sites or sometimes Whole30 sites. I will gravitate towards those recipes because they're just mostly whole foods. And I would recommend for someone who's just getting started into this, comb through those and then choose the one that seems the least complicated to you and has the ingredients that you mostly already have or that you can easily identify at grocery stores. Keep it really easy for yourself when you first get started.
There's so many good options to look up recipes that, it's at the tip of anybody's fingers.
Yeah.
I think probably the only other thing that I'd want to mention is that time of day where people just lose control. So, or most people have a time during the day where they make poor choices or are more likely to make poor choices. They see it as a time of day where they lack willpower. And that's what having that, this is what your snack is, this is what your go-to is, rather than just how many people come home and just open up the refrigerator, open up the cupboard and just
snack attack.
Look and snack attack and eat whatever's there. That's why I think that's one of the places that people really mess up is pre-planning what that snack is going to be and really have that be your only option.
I like that because you're hungry. So give yourself something real to eat. Yeah.
Yep.
I love it, Gillian. Thanks. Those are all very actionable. And yeah, like you said, it might seem overwhelming, but start small, think about what's ahead for the week and prepare yourself for when you know it's going to be the most difficult time for you to make, the decision that you really want to make. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing your cookies.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll see everybody next week.
Bye, guys.